Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is depose, and this verb was suggested or recommended by the viewer Stephen. And Stephen, I want to thank you for that suggestion. Now, let's take a look at some of the ways we can use this verb. The first way you may encounter the verb depose means to remove from office suddenly and forcefully. If you're someone who enjoys reading a lot about history, or maybe that's your field of study, this might be a verb you encounter fairly often through the course of history. So you might think of groups of people kind of rising up together and removing their leader from office. Again, the focus tends to be that this is rather sudden and forceful. This even continues into our modern day. I think we'll look at some examples of that a little later in the video. A second way you may encounter the verb depose is if you work in the legal field or are reading about the legal field. So our second and third definitions are tied together here. It's to either testify to something or to give evidence under oath. It might be in a written statement, or it could mean to question a witness in a deposition. So we'll talk a little bit about that noun form of the word a little later in the video, but this verb and the noun are all connected to things that might occur pre-trial. So it's related to a process called discovery, where each side in a legal matter, whether it's criminal or civil, are trying to get a better understanding and sort of understand what someone might say during a trial. So this is kind of part of their preparation. Sometimes this process leads to parties settling before the matter even gets to trial. For now, you should know that depose is a regular verb. The progressive form of this verb is going to require a spelling change. We have a verb that ends in the pattern of vowel, consonant, E, so we're going to drop the E before we add ing. That forms deposing. The past tense and the participle form of our verb can be made by just adding the letter D, since this verb already ends in an E. Our base verb, depose, ends in a voiced Z sound. Even though it's spelled with an S, it is a Z sound. This means our ED ending is just going to make a D sound. We're not going to add an extra syllable when we say it. The past tense and the participle form of the verb should sound like this: deposed, deposed. Now, I don't have any phrasal verbs that we need to review, so we can move on to doing a little verb tense practice. Today, I thought we would look at the simple past tense and the simple present. Let's start with the simple past tense. We use this verb tense to talk about completed actions that occurred at a known point in the past. Sometimes in the simple past tense, you'll see time signals. Could be a word like yesterday. It could be a specific date. You might see the word ago along with another time period, like 2 weeks ago or 2 years ago. But the nice thing about making sentences in the simple past tense is that our structure stays the same no matter what our subject is. So let's take a look at an example here. So we're going to see our subject, and then we're going to see that ED form of the verb. My simple past tense sentence is: HTS deposed of al-Assad in record time in December 2024. Remember in the beginning when I said to suddenly overthrow a leader, right? Our first definition there said there's lots of examples in history, but also in modern times. So we could use that, our verb of the day here, to describe what happened to the Syrian leader just a few months ago. Now, if you want to make a negative sentence in the simple past tense, again, start with your subject, but use did not and then the base verb. Notice I'm not using the ED form here in the negative. Here's another example. The defense didn't depose the prosecution's expert witness. So this might go back to that third meaning. So This maybe means they did not make the person answer questions prior to the trial. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple past tense. To do that, you'll start with did, then you'll have your subject, and then the base verb. Again, I am not using the ed form of my verb here in the yes or no question. The only time I'm doing that is in the affirmative or in positive sentences. Let's take a look at that last yes or no question. Did Egyptians depose Mubarak in 2011? So again, someone here might be trying to get an understanding of what occurred, and many would say yes. What occurred in Egypt in 2011 constitutes the deposition of a leader, or the deposing of a leader. Now let's move on and make sentences in the simple present. We use this verb tense to talk about our habits and routines. We also use it to discuss facts. This is a verb tense where we must pay attention to our subject. If the subject is I, you, we, or they, then in the affirmative, just use the base verb. But if your subject is he, she, or it, then you want to add an S to the end of the verb in the affirmative. Let's take a look at an example sentence. Our attorneys depose hundreds of witnesses each year. So this might be a statement a lawyer makes as they are recruiting or maybe wooing a potential new client, kind of bragging about, or they might say just stating factually their qualifications, that they are very skilled in this because it is an activity they do quite regularly. Now, if you want to make a negative simple present sentence, again, you must pay attention to your subject. If the subject is I, you, we, or they, use do not and then the base verb. But if the subject is he, she, or it, you'll use does not and then the base verb. Let's look at another example. One of the benefits of using coworkers as witnesses is that the defense attorneys typically don't depose them. I was looking for real examples of our verb, and I encountered this sentence. It was a lawyer giving advice to others, helping them prepare and think about how they whom they might use as witnesses, and again, encouraging coworkers instead of friends or family. Finally, if you want to make a yes or no question in the simple present, what you'll do is start with either do or does. Whatever subject you want to use, whichever form matches the subject, that subject comes next, and then you'll use the base verb. So again, the only time I'm adding an S to the end of the verb is in the affirmative when my subject is he, she, or it. Here's a last example. Does your firm always depose the defendants in your lawsuits? Okay, so here someone might be asking that question again as they're trying to get an understanding of who might be the right attorney to represent them in a particular matter. Now, let's move on and talk about some words that are related to our verb depose. And I've actually already used this word a couple times in the video. The only word we really have to discuss today is the noun deposition. And as we've mentioned earlier, just like our verb, this noun can have kind of two main meanings. So the first relates to the action of deposing someone. So suddenly removing them from office or from that leadership role. And again, throughout history, it's commonly been used with monarchs. So that would be like king or queen. It can be used with elected officials, but even more common with someone who has sort of declared themselves the ruler. So an example of this in a sentence might be, this course analyzes depositions in Northern Europe between 1500 and 1700. Right? So here's somebody maybe describing their history class and what the topic is going to be. Right? Then the second way you can use the noun deposition is again to refer to that process of giving sworn evidence prior to a trial. An example of this might be, the plaintiff filed a motion asking a judge to compel the defendant to submit for a deposition. Here, again, very technical in its legal meaning there, but someone is asking for someone to begin this process of having some formal questioning before a trial. I want to say a special thank you again to Stephen for suggesting today's verb, and I want to thank you all for watching. Have a great day.